All right. Peace and greetings, YouTubers. Terry Crews, what you doing, man? You just decided you were going to be that one, huh? Just all in the way. Just strong, wrong, loud, and proud. And you decided it was going to be you. You were going to nominate yourself to be the face of the Foolery. So, it's disappointing, by the way. Do better. But long story short, Terry Crews has been catching a bunch of flack in response to many of the statements he's released in regards to what's been happening in the United States when we talk along the lines of race and police brutality. And so there's been a bunch of statements that he's pretty much been saying. People were already kind of pissed off with how he responded to NBC and everything happening with Gabrielle Union. Some folks really looked at him sideways when he made the statement about black supremacy. And then he went on to release a new statement where he pretty much states, "If you are a child of God, you are my brother and sister. I have family of every race, creed, and ideology." And I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. We all understand that. It's kind of how most of us see the world. And then he goes, "We must ensure Black Lives Matter doesn't morph into Black Lives Better." And I'm just like, where did that part even come from? Because that's kind of some rhetoric I have not heard. But even if it was, I feel like, to be honest, Black Lives Better don't sound too bad. Better schools, better opportunity, a better lifestyle where you don't have to worry about being unjustifiably killed by police. That actually don't sound too bad to me. But I recognize that the better he's talking about, he's under the assumption that black empowerment means it's an attack on white people. And again, I think there's a few conversations to be had. So let me try to break this down step by step. When we talk about the idea of empowerment, one, empowerment really just is a temporary melody. I was doing some music earlier. Empowerment is just a temporary relief or remedy to living in a crappier system that still exists. It just gets you through the day. It's kind of like when you have a cold. You know what I mean? You take some NyQuil. It's not going to get rid of the cold because the cold will go away on its own in its own due time. But the NyQuil just kind of makes it easier for you to sleep at night, and you wake up being able to matriculate into the next day. You're still going to have the cold, but it just temporarily makes you feel better. Empowerment doesn't have any tangibles behind it. Empowerment is just something that makes people feel better about living under a crappy system. And so what he has been doing pretty much is every time he sees any element of black people elevating themselves or empowering themselves, he sees it as an attack on white people. And I think the issue with Terry Crews is that he pretty much operates along the lines of respectability, because I'll be honest, I love the idea of love and unity and everybody coming together and we are the world and man in the mirror. I'm down with all of that. However, you can never get to that if you never address the underlying issues that exist. And at least specifically for the United States of America, it's racism. And the reason why it is racism is because racism has literally funded and pretty much become the foundation of how the country operates. Everything from housing, healthcare, education, police protection, generational wealth, literally anything you can think of in this country has some kind of tie over back into the realm of racism, because literally that's how our country was founded and funded. When you talk about the ordinances that exist, the laws, the amendments, the articles, that's just the way that life has become within this country. And it's also formed and shaped the viewpoints and opinions of many people, where it's gotten to the point where any kind of conversation that challenges the status quo in regards to race, meaning a conversation that challenges police brutality, a conversation that challenges housing discrimination, that challenges gentrification, that challenges the idea of food deserts, that challenges the idea of pretty much an unfair opportunity when it comes to education, that challenges all of that. For some people, they can't even fathom that idea. It seems offensive, because they've never had to see the world through a lens other than the ones that has been created for them through the element and power of privilege. And so for a lot of people, that the conversations that are happening, it's just, they're too much, uncomfortable. We can't handle it. It's too much for us. And so for somebody like Terry Crews, he loves to latch on to the idea of respectability, because he wants to put all of his energy into feelings. He wants all of his energy to be into how white people feel about what's happening in this collective. And the problem with respectability politics is pretty much the fact that respectability politics doesn't usually work. It's pretty much just saying that you're maneuvering with the hopes that the good that may exist within the offender will see the good that is being put on display or being showcased by the other, and somehow the two goods will meet up and everything comes together in a wonderful collage of greatness. But unfortunately, people always forget that in most cases, the power that exists within the actual offense is heavier than the power that is within the good. And so that offense will always outweigh the good. This is why when you think back to the civil rights movement and you saw all of the marches and people in suits and singing all kind of biblical hymns and we shall overcome and God is with us and everything like that. And this is exactly why when you would see that, you'd still see those same people getting shot and sprayed with hoses, and the dogs are being unleashed, and people being beat with clubs and lynched and burned. And then in reality, those same people doing the burning and the spraying and sicking the dogs would be in church on Sunday. reading out of the same Bible. So again, respectability does not always work in that realms, because at least in that instance, the power structure and the idea of whiteness outweighed the idea of good in people. It outweighed the idea of the good that exists within people. And so during that time period, people were like, okay, yeah, we can hear you singing the wonderful songs and marching. And yes, that's a nice suit you got on, better than what I'm wearing. However, I'm more comfortable backing this power structure because it's the status quo that pretty much creates my livelihood. And so I'm going to fight and protect for that. So spray it. So that's literally where we're at. And so with Terry Crews, I'm just like, every single time, like, your energy's in the wrong place. And I find it so funny that he will always police how black people protest or how black people speak out, but you're not seeing him give that energy to the actual racism. You're not seeing him give that energy to the actual racist. I'm not seeing the statements against police brutality. I'm not seeing the statements against what we've seen happen in the past and what we're still seeing each and every day. As I continue to see clips of people trying to counter some of these protesters where they're showing up with guns, and we've seen some people get shot at in a few places, even one person be killed. I'm not seeing the energy where you're addressing the person who went out and shot some innocent protesters. I'm not seeing the energy where you saw the police go and pepper spray people who were at a violin protest where they were silent and they're just watching somebody play the violin, and here come the police, tear gas, they're ready. I'm not seeing the energy towards that. I'm not seeing the energy being put towards the guy that showed up with a bow and arrow ready to shoot any police protester. Just, where's the energy for that? And so I find it funny that you're basing all of the focus on how black people are making white people feel about black people being oppressed in a country that's racist. Make that make sense. You want to know what it sounds like? This is what it sounds like, because again, his whole idea is, well, we have to be considerate of feelings. It almost goes back to when Common said that stuff about, in order to end racism in America, black people would have to extend a hand in love to white people, and that would fix the racism. And I'm like, but again, when we're talking racism, it is a structure and a system that was built to marginalize and oppress groups of people to stay in a specific predicament so that others could have an opportunity to elevate. Even when we talk about the idea of whiteness, whiteness was not always a thing. Whiteness became a thing when they recognized that there could be power behind it. When you talk about America in the 19th century, things were still black, things were still white. However, nationality and ethnicity they played a bit more of a role. So it was more so, I'm German, I'm Polish, I'm Russian, I'm Italian, I'm from Austria, I'm from Switzerland, I'm British. It wasn't, I'm white. Yeah, you happen to have white skin, but everybody latched on to whatever country their grandparents came from. Then when we get into the early 20th century, or the early 20th century, and you recognize that there's competition for jobs, they recognize that, hey, if all of us get together, you from Ireland, me from the UK, you from Italy, you from so-and-so, if we get together, we can actually have some power. And then you start seeing the formation of unions and everything else like that. And that power structure was pretty much created to kind of make sure that this collective of people would always have something, and black folks were still going to have to figure it out for themselves. Y'all on your own. So all of a sudden, we're white. White is a thing now. We're going to be white. And that's still a thing today. So that's why I was like, the respectability, that's not going to really get much done, because that just means that you would have to have the expectation that the good that you see in yourself, you believe exists in somebody else. And that's not always the case. And so it's almost as if, I'm going to use this example, since Terry Crews is so pressed on feelings and making sure that we say things nicely when we have to address racism, which I also find funny. I'm like, okay, it's funny that you continue to somehow water down the offense that comes towards a structural system and center it around feelings, as if feelings are interchangeable with a system, as if feelings are interchangeable with something that's structurally put together. Okay, but anyway, so imagine if there's a tornado, right? You're at home, you hear the siren, and so you run. Now you have built a bunker, right? You've built your own little underground bunker to protect yourself if there's ever a tornado. So you're running to the bunker, and the tornado's off in the distance. You can see it coming. And so you go, and you can't get inside of your bunker. Why? Because all of your neighbors who did not build bunkers have already ran inside of yours. They didn't ask. They didn't tell you they were coming. They've already ran in it. They're in the bunker, and they have locked it from the inside. And let's just say there's like a really, really super, super strong window. It wouldn't be a window on this thing, but we're going to use it for this story for now. But let's just say there's some window that's tornado proof, right? And you're looking at all of them through the tornado proof window in the bunker that you built. And you're like, hey, I need y'all to let me in. You're not even cussing them out about the fact that they're in your stuff. It's just like, hey, it's life and death. There's a tornado coming. Let me in. And then all of the people on the inside are like, we don't like the way that you just told us that. We didn't like, you didn't really ask us very nicely. I know it's life and death, and we know you have built this thing, and we didn't build it, and we kind of just jumped in it and took it over, and now we have the power as to whether or not you get to live or die. But I think, we think you could have asked us a little bit nicer. How many of you guys thought that was rude? Greg, did you think that was rude? Yeah, I thought so. Marie, how did you feel? Was that rude? Yeah, he could have asked nicer, right? Yeah. So, do you think there's another way you could ask? And meanwhile, you're outside like, yo, the thing is getting closer. You're watching the debris come. The tornado done picked up a mailbox. The mailbox, it's coming, right? And you're like, listen, can you just let me in? And then the people inside are like, well, what's the magic word? Maybe if you ask a little bit nicer. Actually, while we're at it, what are you going to do to change yourself? What are you going to do to make your situation better so you don't end up like this again? Because if we're being honest, we also don't like the fact that you cut your grass at 8 in the morning. This would symbolize whenever we have a conversation about race and then people try to bring up something else totally unrelated to try to vilify black people to make it look as if they don't have a right to still be pissed off about whatever's happening in the country. We don't like that you cut your grass at 8 in the morning. It's waking some of us up. My great-great-grandmother, she sleeps in until 7:45, and so the first 15 minutes when she wakes up, she likes it to be silent, and then the next 15 minutes she likes to sit and drink her tea with no noise, and you're out there cutting the grass. That's something that offends us. What are you going to do to change that? And meanwhile, the tornado is still coming, right? And you're like, if you don't open this thing, I swear to, And so again, it turns into something where it's life and death. However, you're pretty much your own success and prosperity is dependent upon how somebody feels. Like, that's how stupid Terry Crews sounds. And then this is when the story gets good. Then you happen to look and you recognize that there's somebody in that bunker who is from your house. It's your spouse. Somehow they got in there and they didn't tell you. I don't know, maybe they ran in there first and thought you were already gonna be in there. And so it's like, baby, open it up, tell them to let me in. And it's, well, these are my friends too. And yes, you and I are married, but these are my friends, and I don't like how you talk to them. That wasn't very nice. That's Terry Crews, right? Terry Crews is in the thing. That's who he symbolizes. The one that gets in the way and then wants to align and then pretty much stall the progress and everything. And it's like, baby, open the thing. And it's, we're going to open it, I think, but, you just have to make sure that when you come in here, you're not going to give us a hard time about us locking you out of the tornado bunker that you built, that they pretty much hijacked and took over. And I was just fortunate enough to be in the space because I'm just so happy to be here. That's Terry Crews. And so, that's literally how stupid it all sounds. And then what makes it even funnier, if we want to really twist this little story and make it more of a joke, it's like, okay, boom, COVID-19 is still going around. Now the people in the bunker are like, hey, social distancing, somebody has to get out. I wonder who we're going to nominate to get out, and then boom, they kick the spouse out. Why? Because the spouse is already married to you anyway, and clearly the neighborhood doesn't like you to begin with. And again, it all of a sudden goes back to that idea of what you would call whiteness, or in this specific scenario, the neighborhood collective. All the other neighbors are already on the same page with each other. The only odd one out would be the spouse. So kick them on out. And so Terry Crews just hasn't gotten to the position where he's pissed off enough white people to be kicked out of what you would call favor yet, but give it time. Keep playing, Terry Crews. Do better. So again, it's just like, the idea of respectability and the idea of doing everything in love, that's wonderful. We love that. But that's not ideal in a world that isn't ideal. That doesn't work. For hundreds of years, people have tried the idea of trying to see the good in people, and hopefully that will make them do things better. It never works. It's kind of like people that get disappointed with Susan Collins every single time. Like Susan Collins is a perfect example. That's the senator from Maine. And, every single time there's some kind of crazy policy that's, being voted on that really will disenfranchise a lot of people, and people will suffer or possibly die. She always says, oh, I'm concerned. I'm hurt. I'm worried. I'm uncomfortable. I don't feel right. My heart is heavy. And then she will still go right in there with a smile on and vote for the same foolery, and it still disenfranchises people. That's where feelings are when it comes to politics. That's where feelings are when it comes to the status quo. That's where feelings are when it comes to racism. That's where feelings are when it comes to trying to uproot a system that is screwing people over. And so you're literally living in the era where you're watching the pendulum swing. The pendulum in America has always swung. And right now, for the longest, it's shifted way over into the world of crazy. People are slowly trying to drag it back into, let's make things make sense. But this time, it's like, we don't want the pendulum to swing back. So when it gets here, we're going to tie it so it can't swing back over. But then you got Terry Crews, who has some scissors ready to cut the rope so it can swing back, because he's like, no, we got to give everybody a chance. You got to make sure everybody has an opportunity. Did you ask them how they were going to feel if you tied the pendulum over there? Like, that's where Terry Crews is. So it's just like, you know what? Do better. It goes back to that scenario I gave. I think I gave it in the George Floyd or the Ahmaud Arbery video, where it's pretty much if there was a train that was on the way to prosperity, and at the end of this, when you make it to prosperity, everything anybody would ever want in an ideal world where everything makes sense and everybody's happy and nobody's disenfranchised and all is well, you know, if you can just stay on the train and make it to that station, all is good. However, with this train, there are a bunch of different stops and stations and people can get off. And so every time there's a new stop, somebody sees a crumb of what is symbolic of prosperity and they get off and they get off and they get off. Terry Crews got off the train a long time ago, but he's still trying to give directions to the person driving the train on how to get to somewhere he hasn't been. And so that's the beef that I have with him. I'm like, just fall back. Too much. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Terry Crews, do better, or otherwise just be quiet and get out the way. You're in the way. You're slowing the progress, because the other issue is people who already don't align with the ideas that people have right now when trying to challenge the status quo or trying to change police brutality or fix the issues of race in this country or try to make people whole for all that they've had to endure for 400 or 500 years. You know, all they have to do is latch onto the words of Terry Crews and use it as a weapon. The same way people will weaponize any other black person who aligns with people who are pretty much sympathizers to white supremacy. You always find a token black person and just use their words and use it against, you know, they'll be the example. Well, Terry Crews said it's okay. Candace Owens said it's okay. Diamond and Silk said it's okay. You know, the Hodge twins said it was okay. You know, that's literally what's happening. And Terry Crews, I'm like, you're playing the role. You are playing the role and don't even realize it. Do better. Anyway, I'm out. Subscribe, share your 2 cents.